Game of Thrones Season 6 is over, and it's a brilliant series, but it's going to be a while until we get more adventures in Westeros, so think of this as a way to look back and remember, or just relive some of your favourite moments, and by moments, we mean deaths. The season kicked off with the Red Woman, where we saw Melisandre reveal her true form. Yeah, she's a little older than you might think, eh? At this point, Jon Snow is still dead after being stabbed at the end of last season, so the scenes at Castle Black are mainly building up to his resurrection, but HBO are going to make us wait a little longer for that. Sansa and Theon escape from Winterfell but need a little help from Brienne and Pod, and down in Dorne, the king is assassinated.
And weak men will never rule Dorne again.
Daenerys has a little back and forth with her new captor Khal Moro, we hope you like fire, and finally Tyrion starts to witness the type of civil unrest in Meereen that's sure to give him a few sleepless nights.
We won't be sailing to Westeros anytime soon.
On to episode 2, and surprise, Jon Snow is back from the dead, resurrected by Melisandre. Who knew? Oh, that's right, we all did. This fist-pumping end to the episode isn't really the most shocking moment though, as we lose not one, but 2 house rules in a single show. Ramsay murders his father like this, and added to the fact that he also butchers his baby brother and stepmother, cement him as the most evil bastard in Game of Thrones. Well done, Rammers. Meanwhile, Balon Greyjoy meets his long-lost brother, who's insane.
I am the storm, brother.
And is then lobbed off a precarious-looking bridge, kicking off a delicious new plotline for the Iron Islands. The tension in King's Landing ramps up further when the High Sparrow gatecrashes Marcella's funeral and picks a fight with Jaime. And over in Meereen, Tyrion decides to free the 2 remaining dragons locked away beneath the city. Luckily for him, they weren't quite hungry enough to eat his face. He is only small.
Next time I have an idea like that, punch me in the face.
After the shocking events of Episode 2, Episode 3 Oathbreaker is a little flat. After Jon Snow wakes up and finds some clothes, he proceeds to execute his murderers and leave the Watch for good. We'll find out where he goes later on, but the news that he's finally entering the Game of Thrones is almost as welcome as his resurrection. Elsewhere, Bran has another super useful flashback vision that shows us part of what happened at the Tower of Joy. Young Eddard Stark isn't as honourable as everyone thought, eh? Having been blinded for being a naughty girl and killing Meryn Trant at the end of Season 5, Arya gets her sight back, as we all knew she would. Oh, and Rickon Stark's back. That's important. Must remember that. We have a quick catch-up with Dany, who's in danger for not accepting her boring life as a Khaleesi widow sooner, and Tyrion and Varys find out who's been funding the Sons of the Harpy. Not that that does them much good. In some genuinely shocking news, Episode 4 sees Stark's siblings Jon and Sansa being reunited. As it turns out, Jon hasn't left the wall yet, despite having walked out of the front gates at the end of the last episode. But just as he's packing his bags, his sister Sansa turns up and gives him a hug. During some reminiscing about their childhoods, the 2 Stark siblings turn their attention to the issue of Ramsay Bolton and Winterfell. And the arrival of a well-timed, threatening note from the new Lord Bolton persuades Jon he needs to retake Winterfell, and it looks like the wildlings will follow. Elsewhere, Daenerys has had enough of being pushed around in the desert and burns the Dothraki leadership to death before walking out of the fire unscathed. Again. The mid-season episode was massive. Hodor, one of the most beloved characters of Game of Thrones, sacrificed himself to save Bran and Meera while revealing his true origins.
Hold the door!
But there were other equally important events to come, most notably the discovery that it was the Children of the Forest who first created the White Walkers to protect themselves from mankind. Back with the mere mortals, and Sansa confronts Littlefinger, who told her that her uncle Bryndin the Blackfish Tully has retaken Riverrun. The King's Moot on the Iron Islands saw Theon support his sister Yara's claim for the throne, only for their uncle Euron to win and try to murder them. The prick. Jorah, having been infected with Greyscale in Season 5, decides it's about time to come clean to Daenerys before the infection takes hold and he becomes a rock monster. She promptly rewards him by sending him off to find a cure. And over in Meereen, Tyrion and Varys have managed to build an uneasy peace, but request the help of a new Red Priestess in spreading the news. She proclaims she'll help because Daenerys is the promised one, and just like that, Jon Snow has some competition. Aside from the not-so-surprising introduction of Bran's Uncle Benjen Cold Hand Stark, who slays a few whites to save his nephew, the rest of Episode 6 is action-free. Sam's trip to the family home results in one of the most awkward family dinners known to man,
bringing that to my table and making me dine with it.
But after being berated by his father, he musters up enough courage to leave with Gilly, the boy, and House Tarly's sword, Heartsbane. Elsewhere, Arya decides to leave the Faceless Men after botching another assassination, on purpose, and Daenerys sits on her dragon while shouting at the Dothraki to follow her to Westeros. Finally, Jaime shows up to rescue Marjorie with a bunch of Tyrell soldiers, only to find out that the High Sparrow, with a little help from Marge, has influenced King Tommen into siding with him. It's a real blow because Jaime really wanted to kill him, but any action would have meant civil war in King's Landing, and we're not quite ready for that. Yet. Episode 7 is all about the Hound, and in a new move for Game of Thrones, we see some action before the intro credits. Turns out a religious leader called Ray has nursed Sandor Clegane back to health, and he's helping to build a church in a rural community. That lasts about 5 minutes, as everyone, except the Hound, is slaughtered by some rogue soldiers. Elsewhere, Arya gets stabbed by that bitch the Waif, but she'll get what's coming to her, and in King's Landing, Marjorie warns her grandmother that the High Sparrow is plotting to imprison her.
Go home.
Jaime and Bronn arrive at the siege of Riverrun, but the Blackfish implies that he will never surrender the castle, even if they hang his nephew Edmure. And then we're introduced to the awesome Lyanna Mormont, a savvy 10-year-old who's the Lady of Bear Island, and who's more than ready to put the bastard Jon Snow in his place.
What you have to understand, my lady, is that...
I understand that I'm responsible for Bear Island and all who live here.
Episode 8 reveals that Arya has a really tough tummy because she managed to make it to Lady Crane for a quick patch-up. She doesn't get much rest though, as the Waif eventually finds her, kills Lady Crane, and chases Arya around Braavos. After some impressive gymnastics around the city, Arya dispatches the Waif with the help of Needle and delivers her bloody head to the Hall of Faces, telling Jaqen she's going home.
And I'm going home.
Brienne and Pod arrive at Riverrun, say hi to Jaime and Bronn, and then try to persuade the Blackfish to give up the castle and join Sansa. He refuses, so Jaime threatens Edmure Tully, who then walks into Riverrun and commands his troops to surrender. The Blackfish doesn't make it out alive. Back with the Hound, and he's still seeking revenge on the soldiers who murdered his friends. But before he can hack them all to pieces, he's reunited with Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr, who are hanging them for the same crime. They kill the murderers, have some dinner, and try to talk the Hound into joining them. In King's Landing, the Sparrows invite Cersei to talk with the High Sparrow, and the Zombie Mountain replies by popping the head off one of them. King Tommen punishes her by setting a date for the trial, and proclaims that trials by combat will no longer be legal. The Masters attack Meereen, and Daenerys finally makes it home. The Battle of the Bastards is a long-awaited showdown between Ramsay Bolton and Jon Snow. The condensed version is that there's a big old fight between the two bastards, but let's expand that a little. Jon's force is smaller than the Bolton army, but he has a plan, which quickly falls apart when Ramsay murders Rickon in front of Jon, compelling him to throw away the plan and just go rushing in like a kid running towards a sweet shop holding a free all-you-can-eat buffet. This isn't a good idea, because Jon is now alone and within range of Ramsay's archers. He manages to stay alive though, and just as it's all looking a bit grim for the Snow army, the Knights of the Vale show up and save the day. Jon decks Ramsay, locks him up, and Sansa turns his hounds on him, who eat his face. Meanwhile, in Meereen, Daenerys is pissed, and uses her dragons to roast the Master's boats, then uses Grey Worm to slice the throats of 2 out of the 3 Master rulers. Theon and Yara then show up. Yara has a little flirt with Dany and offers her their ships. She accepts, and it looks like they'll be heading over the Narrow Sea very soon. The season finale, in short, is that Cersei does this, which kills Marjorie, Loras and Mace Tyrell, Kevin Lannister, and a whole load of innocent people. She does manage to become queen though, so... winner? Nope, because the explosion, and the fact that he thinks everyone's dead, causes Tommen to do this. Cersei doesn't have time to get sad about it though, because she's going a bit mad queen and busy getting some revenge on Septa Nunella. But it's best not to think about that if you don't want to have nightmares.
Shame.
Back in the north, Jon and Sir Davos confront Melisandre about the death of Princess Shireen, and the Red Priestess is exiled. Jon is proclaimed King of the North, and thanks to an empowering speech by tiny Lady Mormont, the great houses of the North bend the knee. Jaime pops in to see Walder Frey and gains a new admirer, except that girl is actually Arya, and after making his sons into a pie, she reveals herself, kills Walder, and ticks another name off her list.
The last thing you're ever going to see is a Stark smiling down at you as you die.
The season ends with Bran touching a tree to reveal Jon's true heritage, and it turns out that R plus L really does equal J. While elsewhere, an alliance is formed between House Martell and House Tyrell, and oh sweet dragons, Daenerys is leaving Meereen to head to Westeros with her new hand Tyrion. Winter is finally here.